Today, we're talking about a bird that's at the center of a desperate race against time. It's the Pekin Robin. And what's so wild is that it used to be one of the most common birds you could find, the absolute bread and butter for keepers.
For decades, this is how bird keepers talked about this species. I mean, you can just picture it, right? A charming, tough little bird, super beautiful, a total staple in aviaries all across the United States. Its cheerful personality made it a favorite, but because it was so common, nobody saw the huge vulnerability hiding just beneath the surface.
So this is the central mystery we're unpacking. How on earth does a bird go from being cheap and everywhere to suddenly being rare and incredibly sought after? Well, the answer is a real perfect storm of international regulations, a breeding challenge that was hiding in plain sight, and a whole community of hobbyists who, well, they almost realized what was happening too late.
All right, to really get what went wrong, we've got to rewind the clock. Let's go back to what you could call the golden age of the Pekin Robin. We're talking before the mid-90s, when this bird was basically the icon for anyone just getting into softbills.
And you can tell just how popular it was by all the different names it had. Pekin Robin, red-billed Leiothrix, Chinese nightingale, Japanese nightingale. Whatever you called it, people knew this bird. It was pretty much the go-to first softbill for any new hobbyist, and for good reason. It had a gorgeous song and this amazing, vibrant personality.
They were literally the bread and butter of softbills. Think about it. They were being imported by the hundreds. You'd see them in pet stores all the time. And these guys were tough. They could survive on pretty basic food in less than perfect conditions. They were just always around. Until, one day, they weren't.
So what happened? Well, this thriving world of the Pekin Robin was about to get hit by one single event that would completely silence it and change its fate in the U.S. forever.
Okay, so here's the turning point. In June of '97, the Pekin Robin gets listed on CITES, and just like that, imports are halted. The very last legal shipment hit the U.S. that September. But here's the crazy part. Nobody really panicked. The community didn't notice right away. It actually took a couple of years, until around '99, for people to start looking around their aviaries and going, hey, where did all the Pekin Robins go?
And this is where the whole story just flips on its head. That one little detail that was always just a footnote, their breeding habits, it suddenly became the headline, the single most important chapter in the story of their survival in the U.S.
This quote just nails it, doesn't it? That's the whole paradox. For years and years, why would you bother trying to breed them? It was way easier and cheaper to just import a new one. They were a piece of cake to keep alive, but actually getting them to have babies in captivity, that was a whole other ballgame.
And so when the imports stopped, the entire bird-keeping community was caught flat-footed. Suddenly, all the Pekin Robins in the country were getting older, and there were zero new ones coming in. The only hope, the only path forward to keep them from disappearing from the U.S. entirely was to finally crack the breeding code.
And that's exactly what a handful of dedicated breeders set out to do. This wasn't just about keeping a pet anymore. It was about creating a sustainable breeding program. The mission was to figure out the secret recipe. What does it actually take to get these birds to reproduce?
And it turns out it boils down to three basic, non-negotiable things. And it's not about having super fancy gear. It's all about getting the natural conditions just right. You need a big, planted aviary, you need absolute privacy, and you need lots and lots of live food. So let's dig into what that actually means. Okay, step one is the habitat. The birds have to feel safe, period. So that means putting the aviary somewhere quiet, away from all the foot traffic. You need to pack it with dense plants so they have places to hide. Then, you've got to give them options for nesting. Some baskets, maybe some of those half-fronted boxes, and plenty of materials like grasses, moss, and coconut fibers. And here's the really hard part for a breeder. You have to resist the urge to peek. Keep nest checks to a bare minimum, or you'll stress the parents right out.
All right, step two, the diet. A good quality base food is your starting point, of course, but the real game changer is protein, especially when it's time to breed. We're talking live insects, mealworms, crickets, you name it. And these aren't just a fun little treat, they are absolutely essential. They trigger the breeding instinct, and it's what the parents need to feed their chicks. So, if you get everything right, the habitat, the diet, the privacy, a pair will lay a clutch of about 3 or 4 eggs. And what's cool is that both parents take turns incubating them for about 2 weeks. Then, around 10 to 14 days old, the chicks fledge. They leave the nest, but they're not on their own yet. The parents keep feeding them for several more weeks. And the breeder's role in all this?
Honestly, it's to be a good observer and just stay out of the way. Let the birds be parents.
So, great. We have the blueprint. Problem solved, right? Well, not quite. Unfortunately, it's just not that simple. Even with all this knowledge, the future for the Pekin Robin in the US is still incredibly fragile.
One of the absolute biggest hurdles right now is genetics. Think about it. No new birds have come into the country since 1997. That means every single Pekin Robin in the US today is related to that original group of birds. So finding two birds that aren't related to each other is a massive problem. It's what's called a genetic bottleneck, and it makes an already tough breeding challenge even harder.
And let's say a breeder does manage to get a successful pairing. You're still only getting 3 or 4 eggs per clutch. That's it. You're trying to rebuild an entire population, but you can only do it 3 or 4 birds at a time. It's an incredibly slow process.
And it's not even a guarantee you'll get those 3 or 4 to adulthood. Fledging, that moment the chicks leave the nest, is just a ridiculously critical time. They're so vulnerable to getting chilled or sick. It's a real nail-biting period for any breeder.
Oh, and the list of challenges goes on. You've got chicks getting yeast and bacterial infections in the nest. You can't even reliably tell males from females just by looking at them, so pairing them up is guesswork. Hand-raising is an option, but it's brutally difficult. The hard truth is there are only a handful of breeders out there who are managing to pull this off consistently.
Which brings us right back to the big, looming question. Is this all just too little, too late? For the Pekin Robin here in the US, did we figure things out after the clock had already run down? The race is still on, driven by a few incredibly dedicated people who are fighting to make sure the song of the people's nightingale doesn't just fade into silence.
Thanks so much for watching. By the way, I also publish a bird magazine dedicated to conservation, birding, and aviculture, everything about birds. In the magazine, you'll find in-depth articles, practical tips, and breeder experiences that go beyond what we share here on YouTube. A free standard version is available to download from my website. And if you'd like even more, the premiere version includes additional articles, free ebooks, full-page advertising in the standard edition, and many other great benefits. You'll find the links in the description below. And as always, you're welcome to reach out anytime, either in the comments or by email. See you in the next video. Now, we'd love to hear from you. If you're a bird breeder, share your breeding experiences, stories, photos, and even videos with us. Your contribution could be featured in one of our upcoming projects, helping bird lovers around the world learn and enjoy even more. Simply send us an email at admin@www.birds.co.za. We can't wait to connect with you and your birds.